Hi everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to our garden in Spokane, Washington, where the hardiness zone ranges from 5B to 6A. You know, it can be frustrating when a problem arises in our gardens. It might be something caused by an insect, a disease, the weather, or perhaps something we gardeners either did or didn't do. So I thought you might find it interesting to see the process I go through to figure out what the problem is and how to resolve it. Now there's two things I wanted to mention before we proceed. First of all, if you're looking at the base of the corn plants and thinking, oh boy, they've got a serious problem going on, that corn is actually finished producing. We have harvested all of the ears and we turned off the water to the bed because there's no point in watering them now. So that's why they're brown near the base. Not a problem. The second thing I wanted to mention is just a quick update on the Spokane wildfires. So the good news is that the evacuation orders have been completely lifted. People have been allowed to go back to their homes, or shall I say their properties, if their home has burned down to the ground. The last I heard was that 640 structures had been destroyed. That is awful. And what's even worse is that we're learning that the majority of those fires were caused by arsonists. Don't even get me started on that one. But the air quality is much better. We're still having quite hot days. It's very dry here, but otherwise things are certainly looking better, and that's a good start. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on in our garden right now that is a problem. So this is our squash arbor. I love growing winter squash and pumpkins, and it's great fun to have them climb up the structure. The plants have been doing great. We've got lots of squash on the vines. And then I suddenly noticed something the other day. Do you see how these vines are wilting? I was shocked to see this and immediately went into problem-solving mode. What has changed recently in the garden? Maybe they're not getting enough water. Are insects causing this problem? Is it a disease? The first thing I thought of was that it's a watering issue because our summer has been so hot and dry. But after giving them some extra water, they didn't look any better. Bill got out our soil moisture meter, and the soil in this bed registered as quite wet. Even though it might seem counterintuitive, overwatering can make plants wilt too. So the second thing I thought is, what if it's an insect problem? And of course, the first insect that popped into my mind was squash vine borer, because those are a horrible insect to get in your garden. They cause so much damage. And, you know, we live in a rural area of Spokane. I don't have any gardeners very close to me. And I start all of my plants from seed, so I really have escaped the scourge of those vine borers. At least I thought so. But when I saw that wilting, I thought, oh, that's classic damage. What happens is that the female moth, which is actually active during the day rather than the evening like a lot of moths, will lay an egg at the base of the main stem of the plant. The egg hatches into a pupa, which tunnels into the plants and bores its way through the vines, which of course will kill them. And I thought, oh, please don't let it be them. So the first thing I did was to set a little trap to see if the squash vine borer moths are active in this area. I know the moth is attracted to the color yellow. So I brought out this little yellow pot, filled it with water and a couple of squirts of dish soap, and that way, if they fall into the water, they won't be able to get back out. So I set the trap almost a week ago. I've been checking it every day, and there's been a few flies in it, but that's it. So that's encouraging. I also looked closely at the leaves and the vines to see if I could spot any kind of insect damage, so things like chewed leaves. And I couldn't find anything along those lines. The next thing I did is I went to my book, the Vegetable Garden Pest Handbook, to learn what it might be and how to deal with it if it was actually an insect problem. When I wrote the pest handbook, I realized that sometimes people will see an insect in their garden, but they don't know what it is, or they see damage on plants and they don't know what kind of an insect caused it. So I wanted to make it an easy to use reference. So there's a whole chapter of insect profiles, and you can see the nasty Japanese beetle, leaf miners, all kinds of things. So let's go to squash vine borers. So I have specific information about the squash vine borer, what they look like, and they're actually kind of cool looking, what their life cycle is, which crops you typically see them on, what their signs of activity look like, do they have natural predators, and yes, I'm happy to say they do, and then different types of organic controls for them. You can also see here's the culprit that is inside a squash plant. And look at this, here's some wilted leaves. So after reading the information on the squash vine borers, I feel pretty confident that they're not in the garden. Now, if I hadn't known about the squash vine borers and what their damage looks like, I would still have a way to figure that out. So what I did at the beginning of this chapter is I created a massive chart, and it's organized by the name of the crop, what types of things you might see on your plants, and possible insect culprits. So here's the start of the information about insects that bother summer and winter squash. And at the top of the page here, we have squash vine borer, and it points you to that page I just showed you. And here's the different types of things you might have seen. Yellowing leaves, wilting plants, puncture holes in the stems near the base of the plant, which I'm happy to say I can't find, golden excrement, and dead vines. So that is a way to find an insect based upon what you're seeing on a specific crop. So that makes it pretty easy. When I ruled out the squash vine borer, I suddenly thought, oh, what if it's a disease? Because diseases are really challenging. Fortunately, I wrote a book called The Vegetable Garden Problem Solver Handbook, and a third of the book is dedicated to vegetable plant diseases. And it's laid out exactly the same as the pest handbook. Once again, I've got a massive chart at the beginning of the plant disease chapter, and it is arranged by the name of the crop. So here's the section on squash diseases, and what I did is I described what a person might see on their plant and what type of disease is causing it. And you can see there are all kinds of things. Now, let's get back to the wilting of the squash leaves. I thought, okay, is there a disease that is causing this? Well, first of all, bacterial wilt says sudden wilting of leaves and stems, leaves wilt during the day, recover at night, spots on the fruits, yellow leaves with brown edges, which wilt and die, and the entire vine dies. Well, none of that has happened other than the wilting, and to be honest, I haven't come out in the dark to see if the leaves have recovered. The other disease I thought it could be is verticillium wilt. This says yellow V-shaped leaf spots that spread, leaves wilt and die, plant dies. I do not see any yellow V-shaped leaf spots. So that allowed me to eliminate verticillium wilt. But if any of the diseases sounded like they might be a possibility, I can go to the corresponding disease description, and you'll find out if it's bacterial, fungal, or viral, a description about the disease, the crops most commonly impacted by that disease, what to look for in different types of crops. You can see photos of what they look like, and organic strategies for dealing with them. So that is the process I go through when I'm trying to identify a problem in our garden. Bill and I both think it's probably overwatering that has caused those leaves to wilt. And I'm glad that the plants haven't died, because I really want those squash at the end of the season. But normally, Bill slowly increases the amount of time that the beds get watered through our drip irrigation system. It has been so hot and dry here, so he did a bigger jump in the amount of time that the drip system runs. And a lot of plants think, yeah, this is great, we love this extra water. Apparently the squash plants weren't too crazy about that. Now, I wasn't intending to turn this video into a pitch for my books, but I wrote both of them out of a frustration that there wasn't anything I could recommend to folks that was easy to use, had tons of photos to really help you identify the sources of problems and have organic solutions for them. So if you're interested, I do have them in my Amazon store, and I'll put a link to it in the description of this video on my YouTube channel. As an Amazon affiliate, I do receive a small commission for sales, but that does not impact the price you pay in the least. Remember that your local Master Gardener program can help you solve problems in your garden, and it is a free service, which is a great price. If you don't know how to contact them, just do a web search on the words Master Gardeners, and then put in the name of your city and your state or province, and their website will come right up and you'll know how to contact them. When you encounter a problem in your garden, this is the type of process that I recommend you go through. Think about what the weather conditions have been. Do you see insect damage on the plants? Do you see unusual things on the plants, such as wilting leaves or discoloration of the leaves, and so on? It's always good to be observant. I hope this video was helpful and that your garden stays trouble-free. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. Happy gardening!